Hi everyone, it's Chef Anna Olson here, and you may know me as a cookbook author or television host, but what I am is a baker, a pastry chef at heart. And I'm pleased to be here on behalf of Artists and Artisans Development Network and Saffron Hub to answer a few of your questions. So thank you so much for sending them in. I have them all here, so I'm going to read them off. I'll tell you who asked that question, and then I'll give you my honest off-the-cuff answer. So this is like a one-sided dialogue, and I hope you enjoy it and get some valuable information from it. All right, the first question comes from Eric L., who asks, do you think being a great pastry chef is a natural talent, or is it something anyone can learn? I consider myself a teacher, so I am a great believer that anyone can learn just about anything. And I know a lot of people will say, oh, well, I can cook, but I can't bake. It's simply math. We spend more of our time even just cooking for our families, but just the time it takes is the time it takes, and we spend less time baking. So I think when it comes to baking, you can learn the skills. What does take practice and your own personality shows through is with decorating. Decor work, whether it's finishing cakes, assembling macarons, visualizing plating on a restaurant-style dessert, that does take practice, just like learning to paint or draw or take photographs. But I do believe it can definitely be learned. Now, question number 2 comes from Chef Suhail. What inspired me to become a pastry chef? Well, that's a big question, but I would say, I think like a lot of people who love cooking and baking and have turned it into a profession, there was a family influence. And for me, my grandmother was my biggest influence. She loved cooking and baking for her family. But her energy and excitement came when it was time to make desserts and make cookies. And that was, as a little girl growing up, when I wanted to visit with Grandma, it meant I was in the kitchen. And if I was in the kitchen, she was going to put me to work. And so that's how I came to appreciate not just baking itself, but the love of baking to share with others. So for me, I give full credit to my grandmother. Now, Jessica L. asks the question, what is your baking style and the philosophy behind it? That's a very big question too. And I consider myself a technician when it comes to baking. I love wrestling with the guts behind a recipe. What's going to make the chocolate cake the best chocolate cake? Is it going to be, what's going to make it the most moist, the most delicious? What does it need to be in combination with the fillings and the frostings? When it comes to a philosophy, I gel it down to a single word: respect. And for me, what that means in terms of my career as a baker and pastry chef is respecting the ingredients, knowing when and how they need to be treated and when they need to be left alone. Respect for the technique, very important in terms of baking. And that's your tool to make things happen and make them happen favorably for you. So knowing how to add ingredients in what order, when to whip the eggs and when not to whip the eggs. And then ultimately what counts is respect for people. And that means, as a restaurateur or a bakery owner, respect for your paying customer, knowing what they want and knowing what you're capable of delivering, and also what you're not capable of delivering is also very important. They are your paying customer, and also respect for your team, your staff, and of course, don't forget respect for yourself. The next question comes from Kyle M., who asks, how have your desserts evolved over the years? Well, that's a great question. When I was a restaurant pastry chef, I was focused on plated desserts, and it was easy enough to create a composition where you had your dessert element, your sauce, your accents, your garnish. You could really build taste and texture and a sensory experience through plating. Now, when I opened a bakery, it changed so much more because I had to be able to deliver a dessert that was self-contained and complete in one item. A cake that had all the taste and texture and visual appeal of a plated dessert, but yet it was out of my control how it was served. And in terms of cookbook writing and television and showing recipes on social media, which all of you do, it takes that eye, that sense of packing in visually all those characteristics of taste, texture, smell, and sight, even sound, in a single photograph or image, or using descriptive adjectives. So I know you face that all the time. And the best bit of advice I had from a producer years ago is when you're describing something on camera or in writing, don't just say it's delicious, because that should be implied. It's of course delicious, but give us more information. And so that always pushes me to use further adjectives. So I hope that helps show you how I've evolved over the years with my dessert styles. What I will say though is you've probably noticed over the years, I tend not to jump on too many last minute trends. I love progressive techniques and trying new styles and trying new recipes, but the trends that will be there one day and gone the next, I don't want to be a person that's there one day and not the next. So I don't jump on those trends as quickly. So that's a very good question. Now, Nuzat Bakatiari from Fusion Bites asks essentially about my position on where we are in these changing and stressful times in the restaurant business. And this is part of why you're gathering together to discuss and collaborate and get new ideas. And it is such a challenging time, and we have to just kind of hunker down and get through these next few months. The happy thing is we're not in March 2020. This is January 2021. There is hope on the horizon. Do I think the way we dine out has changed forever? I think it has. And I think we will have to adapt. And my thinking is, and this is in part because my husband is a chef professor at Niagara College and is teaching the up and coming group of employees, chefs, and managers. They are going to be our hope because they know nothing other than this state. And so with fresh eyes and fresh energy, we are going to be able to take where we are now and see the future and be able to adapt. I think as challenging as this time is, we've proven that we can pivot and adapt. And so with a fresh start, I think we can continue to do so. And takeaway dining is forever changed now, and it's going to be a part of just about every restaurant. I can't imagine. Where we have to get smart is when it comes to our efficient packaging, isn't it? Got to work on that one. So very good question. Now, Seema S asks, would I consider myself an artist? I would say, I'm going to back up to what I earlier said, I don't consider myself an artist. I consider myself a technician because I like to get into the gears of how a recipe works and how ingredients work and try and make the best recipe possible to share with you, so that if you choose to be the artist, you've got the foundation of a great recipe, and then you can use your self-expression to decorate it, finish it, prepare it, and present it as you wish. Now here's a question from Troy L, who asks, what trends am I seeing in pastry today, and what am I most excited about? And what is the one food or pastry trend I would wish would just go away? Let's talk about the ones I love right now. Because I'm seeing home bakers embrace baking, I am not seeing, fortunately, a shortage. I don't think that's going to impact the bakery and baking business just because people are baking more at home. They're exploring now, they're interested. I think home bakers are really appreciating how much work goes into baking. The first time you make a loaf of bread in your life, you realize it may be simple, but it's not simple to make. So one of the industry trends I'm loving right now that is actually extending into the home baking category is laminated doughs. And for so many years, we relied on pre-prepared puff pastry and pre-made croissants to get us through our business. But I love that there's a focus and attention and an interest in revisiting that classic style of pastry preparation. So whether you're making puff pastry, croissants, if you're getting kooky with the cronuts, I'm actually experimenting with laminated brioche these days. And then the sort of offshoot pastries like kouign-amann, which is basically a croissant, but the last fold is done with sugar. So you get that crystallized caramelized sugar on the outside of a kouign-amann pastry. I just love and respect the technique, the method, and then the end result you get from that. And the one thing, I'll be honest, that I wouldn't mind if I've had enough. They're pretty, they're lovely, and every 7-year-old absolutely adores a unicorn cake, but I'm looking forward to when we move on to whatever that next thing is. So what are you going to make it be? All right, another question from Julia R. Was there anything that I thought I wanted to do before I started as a pastry chef? Well, that's a very good question to ask, Julia, because being a pastry chef was not my first career path. I studied political science in university, and even though my grandmother was my key influence, baking and cooking was such a part of my life and my passionate hobby that I never considered it as a career until after a few years, after I graduated and worked in banking, that I realized what made me happy was baking. So it was a little tougher than erasing that middle letter N, but I quit banking, went to cooking school, worked in the industry for a while until I worked my way up. And when it comes to cookbooks and television, that was not an intended path. It was an opportunity of good timing. So it has helped me embrace the philosophy that opportunity doesn't always come at a convenient time. So you have to keep your eyes open for those opportunities because it can be quick to miss them if you've got your head down and so focused on today's problems that you miss the bigger picture. So I'll use that little story for that bit of wisdom that I always try and remind myself. And the other thing, our sort of family philosophy is no is not an answer. You always say yes if you want to do it. Well, actually, it comes down to why not? If you want to try something new, why not? So long as it's not going to hurt you or others financially or physically, even if you're unsure or nervous about it. I mean, people in the hospitality industry are used to taking some risks. So, you have to weigh them carefully and go back to that philosophy of respect. But with that helps you, I hope, make some good decisions as we are in these changing times, but potentially in a few months, wouldn't it be nice to say within 6 months, we'd be looking at new and exciting opportunities coming down the way. So I prefer to look ahead, not look behind. And I'm going to take this last question. Which is the dish I've created that I'm most proud of and why? Well, that's a fun question. It comes from Alexa P. And I would say I can't name a single one. It is whatever I'm working on right now is the one I am most passionate and excited about. So, as I mentioned earlier, right now I am right into laminated brioche. Thank you very much, everyone. All the best. Have a super session this weekend.